What's up guys, it's Jacob Randall Holmes, and if you're new here, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and if you're not, thank you so much for showing back up. So there's this one camera in Sony's lineup that just confuses me when you see it on YouTube, and it's this one. The Sony ZV-1F is the cheapest Sony camera in Sony's vlogger lineup, and it is a predecessor or a alternative route to the very popular original Sony ZV-1. Now, as of today, the Sony ZV-1 Mark II was released, I believe, last month. So this camera falls in a weird spot, and it has a sticker price of about $500. But recently, last week was Amazon Prime Day, and this little guy right here with my EDU discount stacked on top of my Prime Day discount was only $348. So the original ZV-1 is still well over $600, and the ZV-1 Mark II comes in around $900. So I couldn't resist myself when I saw that price. Now, what's tricky about this camera is when you see YouTubers or general users use this camera, the results are completely all over the place. It's actually like the most inconsistent Sony camera that I've ever seen as far as results go. The most common Sony camera review you see when a new Sony camera is released is you see iJustine and Jenna Ezerik's video hit the web probably first. And in iJustine's video, she uses the ZV-1, I believe in Maryland, outside, and it looks perfectly fine. It looks exactly how you think a vlogging camera would look outside. It works perfectly. But when the more camera-focused, like film photographer, not just tech YouTubers like Jason Morris or Kaiwa or Locke or the Northrops, the footage looks wildly inconsistent. And for example, Gerald Undun's video absolutely butchers it. And he says at the $500 price point, this is a ridiculous option to replace your phone. But when you have that Prime Day discount on top of the EDU discount, I think it might be different. So let's see. Also, I may be mistaken, but I believe Sarah Dietschy used this in the vlog part of her wedding video. I swear I heard her say that on either the Genius Bar podcast or the Same Brain podcast. I'm not sure which, but I know that Sarah has used it even though she doesn't have a dedicated video for it. So we have our normal documentation. This is so much less intimidating than the full-blown Sony Alpha cameras. Like, those boxes are crazy. So we have a little white envelope. I wonder what this is. Oh, this is I know what this is. This is the little Tanny Dead Cat. A USB to USB-C cable. We have the actual body itself. We'll put that down for a second. If all Sony batteries were only this tiny still, oh my goodness. Wonder how long the Sony NP-B-X1 is gonna last. Now, what made me pull the trigger on this bad boy is that my friend Paige has had the Sony ZV-1 since it was released, and she just recently got the Sony ZV-1 Mark II. So I thought for this price, this was definitely worth the experiment. So something that I'm really curious about is I know it doesn't have built-in ND filters like the ZV-1s, but I wonder what auto does when you're out in the bright sunlight during the day. Because if you have to use an ND filter with this everywhere, I might understand why this is not as popular. But my objective with this video is to see what does this camera look like in the auto setting, in a vlog setting, as a runaround camera. Because here in Miami, Florida, I had just made a video about how I do not like to use my fancy cameras at the beach during summer activities when it's like 95 plus and the humidity is crazy and it's nasty and you're oily and blah, 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 all the stuff here. So my objective is to see what is this guy like as a general purpose everyday camera. So with that said, let's check it out. I can tell you one thing that absolutely makes this camera worth it in my opinion, especially for the price I paid for it, is I love this touchscreen. Touchscreens on cameras are like the absolute best. See yourself in the Sony ZV-1F? All right, you know, for a $348 camera, that is not a bad image. Matter of fact, I'll tell you right now, the thing that I absolutely notice about this is significantly cleaner footage than my smartphone would give me. But you know, I gotta say, the Sony ZV-1F, I mean, that's really not bad considering this is a 1-inch sensor point and shoot. I'm digging this thing so far. Okay, so a couple things. I just looked at some of the footage from the ZV-1F, and I'm not gonna lie to you. Okay, so automatically, if you open this camera right out of the box, it's gonna have the skin smoothing feature on it. The A7 IV has that feature. The original ZV-1 is also what made that popular. I do not like that look. Like, I look like I have some weird makeup on, so I'm not really a fan of that mode. Make sure you turn skin smooth off to see a true image. For what you get, I mean, I think it's $350 well spent. But I brought this for the Florida element, so we need to see how it does in super, super hot sun. Because if I need an ND filter, I will not be able to use this little guy for the next couple of days. Okay, so here we go. First time in the wild with the Sony ZV-1. I am outside, and this is where the auto mode really needs to come through. I can tell just by looking at the camera that the shutter speed is increasing, so the auto mode is making adjustments. Now, because I have sunglasses on and because it's bright, I can't really tell what kind of adjustments are happening in real time, but it's not the worst image, and it isn't too overexposed. But from what I'm seeing, it's not the worst image, and it doesn't look too overexposed. All right, now I'm gonna walk into direct sunlight, and we're gonna see how it does. And now we're in the absolute brightest, harshest conditions that Florida can deal out. It is sunny. I can see the pool in the background. The pool is in focus. I believe I'm a little underexposed now to get that in focus. Yeah, so now if I go directly against the sun, so my face is directly in the sun, my skin does seem overexposed. I can't really see the green as much anymore. Well, yeah, you can. It's just a very harsh image at this point. I'm gonna walk back into a shaded area and we'll see how much of the color holds up when we get in the shade. Okay, so it took the Sony a couple seconds to readjust. I would say at that point, it's got it back. Color looks okay, considering how harsh these conditions are. We have our true color back, and that looks awesome. Okay, so I've been using the ZV-1F all day, and thing number one about this camera that I am not the biggest fan of is the stupid, cute little lens cap that it's got on it. Oh my gosh, is that thing, like, if I still have that thing a week from now, I'm gonna be amazed, because it's so tiny. However, I probably wouldn't pay almost $250 to $300 more just to have that extendable and retractable zoom lens cover. So now we're out on the water, and this is when I'm curious what the built-in dead cat on top of the built-in Sony ZV-1F mic is sounding like, because even with the Rode video mic or the smaller Rode shotgun mic that I usually use on my full-frame camera, I'm assuming we're probably still getting a little bit of wind noise. Now, this is about the harshest exposure that Florida sun can give you. I mean, okay, that's a bit of an overstatement. Never mind, I take that back. That is a completely correct statement. So this is where I'm curious how blown out the blues are. I want to see if the sky is still intact. I can still see through the screen that we have the different color between the water and the sky and the landmass in the back. Well, I guess that's just the horizon. But I'm curious to see what that looks like. Our shutter is currently over 5,000, which is ridiculous. But you know, this is the kind of condition that you would use this camera for. Your social walk around camera when you're on a walk, on a nature walk, going to Disney, going to a theme park, something that's pocketable, something that's easy. I'm really curious to see how blown out and white my face is with the direct sun, but you know, this is the camera. This is the camera in the wild. Also, how is the stabilization with the whip hands? Am I starting to get like the jiggly head effect with that rolling shutter? Okay, so this is another one of your standard vlogger shots. You have the camera away from you. It's about 2-ish feet away from me. I'm really curious if this microphone is picking up my voice with the wind and the provided dead cat. But how does it look? Do I have depth of field? Are you seeing like the detail behind my shoulders? Am I coming in and out of focus? How am I doing? And again, we're in extreme lighting conditions, so I'm really curious to see how does the image look? How does the color look? Will color correction in this auto profile fix it? Hands down, the biggest problem with this camera is the battery. Yeah, the battery, definitely not the strongest feature of this camera. Since 2020, I've only been using the Canon LPE6 and the Sony NP-F-Z100, and those are pro batteries that are meant to power cameras with 4K 120, 10-bit 422 color. Okay, this is a good opportunity to test the dead cat on this camera because... Okay, so while I'm talking about the dead cat, I just want to point out, I'm aware in the left of the frame, the focus is coming in and out on the tree. I'm not entirely sure why that's happening. It didn't happen in any other situation or shooting environment, so maybe that's just because there's so much movement happening on the subject behind it, but I am aware that it's doing that, and you know, that sucks. I'm not sure why this camera is having that issue, but Just so you know, this is the only time in the 5 days of shooting that this happened while I was using this camera. Okay, back to the video. But right here, what we're doing now, this is where this camera sings. 24 frames per second, standard in its auto mode. You're golden. It's perfect. This camera is great for that. Now, where you start to see the shortcomings of this camera is definitely if you start moving around with it. It's not the best vlogging camera, even though it says it is just for that vlogging. Perfect example, last year I took a trip to the Smoky Mountains with my friends. This would have been a terrible, terrible camera for that trip because when you're hiking in the mountains, you can't see the ground, so you're shuffling your feet and you're in hiking boots, and it's a lot of up and down, stuff like that. This is not good for that. The rolling shutter is definitely noticeable with this camera, so you do have to watch it. So when you're doing big walking steps, I don't think this is the best camera for that. Now, if you're in an airport or you're walking around inside and you're not taking like giant steps or moving fast, you're fine. The other place where you start to see this guy separate from the bigger Sony cameras is when you start to get into like really nasty low light conditions. Here's a shot I took in the theater. Okay, so this is the last light setting I wanted to check. This is a theater. A theater has the harshest lighting known to man, and if the footage holds up without too much noise in the blacks and in my facial profile, that will fully give me the verdict on this camera. So, currently we have blue. Directly behind me is a harsh orange, and we have stage lights behind me, which is about as hot as it gets. I can tell my facial profile is completely discolored, but let's see how I do when I go into complete darkness. And remember, it's on auto mode, so everything that's happening right now, the camera is automatically adjusting, and boy, this is trippy. Remember, this is a $372 1-inch sensor. It's also Sony's cheapest camera. How's it looking? Walking towards the blue light again. It's like a really trippy effect. I'm really curious to see like what kind of noise is going on. And when you're in those conditions, that 1-inch sensor, you know, despite it being a Sony, this isn't the A7S III, this isn't the FX3, this isn't any of those cameras in the $1,500 to $3,000 to $4,000 range. So you can't really expect it to outperform them or even perform in ways that are like close. But for $372 with any light source, the autofocus and the auto coloring mode kicks in and you're golden. But let me be crystal clear with you. As far as vlogging and using this camera as a flip out screen camera, this absolutely outperforms the iPhone in most cases. For example, inside, if you're using that selfie camera, the ZV-1F wins by miles. It beats the iPhone's front-facing camera. But at the end, do I like this camera? Am I gonna keep this camera? Would I recommend this camera? And it's simple. If you can get this camera on sale, and I mean like a real sale, if this camera is $100 off and you're like in the $400 range, absolutely yes, buy this camera. And if you're in college and you're a musician or you're a videographer or you have any content creation aspirations in general, I would say become a Sony EDU member and get this discount at every single camera retailer that you can find. And this camera's a no-brainer. At $348, $372 after tax, this is a must-have camera. I'm absolutely gonna keep this camera. This is absolutely gonna be my beach camera. This is absolutely gonna be my airport camera. This is absolutely gonna be my camera that I use when I'm recording stuff in public places and it's like the lighting is not great. And with my bigger cameras, I would just be focusing and changing the settings all at once. This camera is perfect. And I actually have some content in mind planned for this camera and how I'm gonna use it. And you'll see it. I would 100% recommend this camera if you can get it on sale. And if you can grab it on Prime Day or you can grab it on Black Friday at $348, stop watching this video, go buy it. Anyway guys, that about wraps it up for me. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like or a comment below. That really helps the channel. And if you could do me one more favor, I applied for a job earlier this week and there's a video introducing myself to that company. It's actually my last video. I'll put it in the YouTube card here and in the description below. If you could go like and comment on that, that would be extremely helpful for me. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching and I will see you in the next one. Bye.